You ever stare at something that looks dead and wonder if maybe it's just sleeping? That was my dad's computer repair shop. Dusty signage, yellowing receipts, ancient desktop towers that hadn't booted since 2005. It sat on a quiet corner of a nowhere city, barely hanging on. I was 22, fresh out of state college with a computer science degree, and I saw something no one else in my family did: a heartbeat under the rust. My dad, Robert Carter, had given up hope. To him, fixing things meant using old tools on older problems. "Nobody repairs stuff anymore, Ethan," he grunted one night, flipping through his faded ledger. "They replace it. You're wasting your time." I didn't argue. I coded. In the back room of that dying store, I built a basic software system that would text customers updates about their repairs. Seemed small at first until people actually started coming back. Then other repair shops started asking to use it too. I didn't just fix computers. I solved a pain point. Within months, I evolved our business from a mom and pop repair hole to something leaner, smarter. We called it Carter Tech. By year 2, we weren't fixing machines anymore. We were selling software inventory systems, invoicing tools, customer portals. I led the code, the direction, the grind. No days off, no parties, just growth, real growth. The only person who ever stopped by from the family, my younger brother Lucas, fresh out of an Ivy League finance program and already working with high-end clients in New York. Lucas would visit and laugh. "You look like a ghost, man. All this for a repair shop?" he'd say, sipping $8 slates while I downed reheated gas station coffee. He didn't get it. He never did. But one day, he would pretend he did. And that's when everything started to crack. 3 years in, Carter Tech passed $5 million in revenue. We had clients from all over the country, a team of 12, and our second office space downtown. I had just signed 2 new contracts and pulled another, all-nighter rewriting the back end to scale with demand. I should have felt proud. Instead, I felt the shift. That December, Lucas showed up unexpected, uninvited, and far too charming. He walked into the office like he owned the place, grinning at the framed milestones lining the wall. "Damn, Ethan," he said. "You really built something." He said he was moving back to help. Said I needed someone who understood finance and long-term growth. "You're a genius with tech," he smiled. "But businesses need vision too." I should have listened to my gut. But I was exhausted. And part of me, the part still craving some kind of family validation, thought maybe he actually meant it. Within a few weeks, Lucas had embedded himself everywhere. Clients liked him. Investors liked him. The board loved him. He didn't understand our product, but he didn't need to. He understood perception. He played golf with partners, showed up in magazine articles, and slowly became the face of Carter Tech. I didn't care for fame. I never chased the spotlight. But Lucas? That man built his entire existence around being seen, and I had just handed him the perfect stage. Then came the Monday morning meeting. I walked in with updates for our new platform release. Lucas stood first. Big smile. Bigger announcement. After discussions with our father and the board, he said, "I'm stepping in as co-CEO to help guide Carter Tech through its next chapter." Co-CEO. I looked around the table. People nodded like sheep. My dad Robert sat beaming like this was his proudest moment. I asked the obvious. "Why am I hearing about this now?" Lucas didn't flinch. "You've been so busy building, Ethan. Let me focus on scaling." Right then, I knew. This wasn't a partnership. It was a takeover, and I'd just invited the enemy through the front door. You don't notice a thief when they walk in smiling. At first, I tried to stay focused. I told myself Lucas would handle the surface-level stuff: events, partnerships, investor calls, while I stayed in the trenches, building what actually mattered, the product. But something started shifting, and not in ways you'd catch on a calendar. It was subtle. Meetings I used to lead were suddenly rescheduled. Decisions the first should have been a part of were now already made. My questions were met with vague reassurances. I was being boxed out of my own company. And the worst part? It was working. Lucas didn't care about tech, but he knew how to play the room. He smiled at every pitch deck, dropped buzzwords at networking events, and had this uncanny ability to repeat things I said in a way that made them sound like his ideas. Suddenly, Carter Tech wasn't a tech company anymore, it was a brand. His brand. I worked 12, 14 hours a day, while Lucas did press interviews in tailored suits. And every time my name came up in a story, it was and his brother Ethan, the technical co-founder. Like I was the intern who stuck around too long. Still, I swallowed it. Until the 60th birthday party. That's when everything snapped. Lucas threw a massive event at the most luxurious hotel in the city. Said it was to honor Dad. But when I walked in, I knew exactly what it really was. LED screens played highlight reels of Carter. Tech's growth with Lucas in every shot. Investors and partners mingled under banners that read Carter Tech, the vision of tomorrow with Lucas's face right beneath. My name? Not once. And then, the lights dimmed. Lucas took the stage with a champagne glass in hand, and a smirk that sent ice down my spine. This isn't just a celebration of our father, he said, but of the future. Starting tomorrow, I'll be assuming the role of sole CEO of Carter Tech. The room burst into applause. I didn't. I stared at him, straight-faced, calm. Lucas turned to me mid-speech, eyes locked. Don't get me wrong, he said. Ethan's been essential. His technical skills got us here. But we all know leadership is more than just code. It's vision. And, well, that's where I come in. I didn't flinch. I didn't blink. But inside I burned. I looked at Dad. He didn't defend me. He nodded, proud, like he had just handed Lucas the keys to the kingdom. And in that moment, I realized this had never been about partnership. It had always been a coup, and I'd given them the map. The next few weeks were a blur of humiliation. Lucas removed me from high-level meetings. My access to certain files was revoked. Teams stopped CCing me on projects I built from scratch. When I raised concerns, relax, Lucas would say. You're still our lead developer. Just focus on what you're good at. And then came the email. Finance forwarded me a draft from Lucas, proposed shareholder restructuring. Language so buried in legal fog it could have fooled a judge. But not me. It outlined a transfer of internal control that would reduce my voting power to under 25%. If signed off by the board, Lucas would own me on paper, in court, everywhere. That night, I didn't sleep. Instead, I reviewed every document from the past 5 years. Every share agreement. Every clause. Every loophole. And that's when I found it. 3 years ago, when we needed capital for our first office expansion, Dad sold me 26% of his shares. Said he wanted to empower me. I had 25% already. That made 51%. A controlling interest. Lucas never checked. Because Lucas underestimated me. Everyone always had. I smiled for the first time in weeks. Not because I had won yet, but because I finally saw the board he thought he was playing on. And I had all the real pieces. But it wasn't enough to stop him privately. No, this needed to be public. He needed to be exposed the way he exposed me at scale. So I planned. I moved quietly. I scheduled meetings. I spoke to clients. I drafted notices. I backed up everything, contracts, timestamps, ownership documents. And then I waited for my moment. Lucas had forgotten that while he was building image, I was building infrastructure. He didn't just take the spotlight. He stepped into the blast radius, and I was done being silent. They say revenge is best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is best served calculated with timestamps, signatures, and a digital paper trail that ends careers. The morning after Lucas's announcement at Dad's birthday gala, I was in the office by 6 a.m. The lights were still off. I sat at my old CEO chair, the one I'd once bought secondhand and assembled myself and waited. The plan was already in motion. Emails had been queued, contracts reviewed, a particular renewal form never submitted, and a single email, drafted the night before, was scheduled to send at precisely 9:00 a.m. to every major client Carter Tech had. All I needed now was the show. At 9:01 a.m., the glass doors swung open. Lucas walked in like a prince returning from conquest designer suit, smug grin, phone glued to his hand. Behind him was Dad, looking equally pleased with himself. "You're early," Lucas said, barely glancing at me. "Didn't expect you to show your face today." I smiled. "Sit down." He stopped mid-step. "Excuse me? Both of you. Sit." Dad frowned. "Ethan, let's not." I tapped the tablet in front of me. The conference room screen lit up with a contract. "Let's take a walk down memory lane," I said. 3 years ago. Expansion funding. "Remember when you sold me 26% of your shares, Dad?" He blinked. What does that have to do with?" "That plus the 25% I already had," I continued, "gives me 51%. Majority control." Lucas's smirk twitched. "I'm the CEO of Carter Tech," I said flatly. "You're just a PR stunt gone stale." "No," Lucas said, jaw tightening. "That's not there was restructuring. Pending restructuring," I cut in. "Not approved. And now, irrelevant." I swiped to the next slide. "Let's talk clients." On the screen, my email from this morning, addressed to all our major accounts. It informed them of Lucas's attempted takeover and that the product would be moving under new leadership unless certain actions were reversed. "Check your phone," I said. Lucas looked down. His face drained of color. One by one, termination notices rolled in. Key partners, retainers, national brands, gone. I had spoken to each of them personally over the past 72 hours. Not a single one trusted Lucas to lead a tech company. They wanted me. "You thought they stayed because of the brand?" I asked. "They stayed because I built what they rely on." Lucas's voice cracked. This is blackmail." "No," I said, "this is leverage." I clicked again. "Let's move to software." Another document appeared. Licensing contracts. Logos terms. The core codebase Carter Tech runs on doesn't belong to Carter Tech. It belongs to Slate Core LLC, a private company I incorporated 4 years ago. "Remember that licensing agreement you both signed last week?" Dad's eyes widened. "You said I never submitted it." I pulled up the timestamp. As of 8:55 a.m. today, Carter Tech no longer has a valid license to run its software stack. Lucas stumbled back a step. "You're bluffing." I stood calm, controlled. "Try running the dashboard. It's offline." He pulled out his phone in a panic. I watched the horror spread as he refreshed the admin portal. Blank. Locked out. Even internal tools had gone dark. He checked his inbox. License expired. Clients gone. System down. Dad's voice finally broke the silence. "What are you doing, Ethan?" "What you both forced me to do," I said. "Cleaning up the mess you made trying to erase me." Lucas exploded. "You can't just steal everything." I turned to him. "Steal? I made everything. You tried to take it. You tried to push me out of my own creation, and now you have 2 choices." I dropped a folder onto the table. Option 1, I walk. I take the code, the clients, and the dev team. Carter Tech becomes an empty name with no product, no revenue, no leadership. You get to explain that to investors. Dad paled. Option 2, you both resign immediately. I take full control. You keep your shares passively. No voting rights. Lucas gets a severance and leaves today. Lucas's fists clenched. "You wouldn't dare." I leaned forward. "Try me." He stood frozen, eyes glassy. For the first time in his life, Lucas had no move left. He wasn't the puppet master anymore. He was the puppet strings severed. Dad slowly sank into the chair beside him. "Can we Renegotiate? I laughed cold and hollow. Negotiate? After you stood by while I was blindsided and humiliated in front of investors? You let him turn this company into his vanity project. And now you want to talk? Silence. No one moved. No one spoke. Eventually, Dad looked at the folder. His hand trembled as he opened it. He read each page like it was his own obituary. Then he signed. Lucas didn't speak, didn't blink, just grabbed the pen and stabbed his name onto the dotted line. His hand was shaking so hard, he smeared the ink. I closed the folder and slid it into my bag. It's done, I said. Lucas shot to his feet. This isn't over. I looked him dead in the eye. Oh, it is. He stormed out. The door slammed hard enough to shake the walls. Dad stayed seated, staring blankly at the table. He looked old, defeated. A man who bet against his own son and lost. You really did this, he muttered. No, I said, collecting my things. You and Lucas did this. I just took back what was mine. And with that, I walked out of the room. I didn't look back. Lucas was gone by noon. He didn't speak to anyone, packed his things, walked past the dev team without so much as eye contact, and disappeared into the elevator like a ghost that never belonged there in the first place. I didn't throw a party. I didn't make a speech. I just sat in my office, the real one this time, closed the blinds, and stared out the window at the skyline I used to think was out of reach. But I wasn't naive. Taking back the title didn't erase the damage. The next few weeks were chaos. Investors called, confused and skeptical. Some were angry, others disappointed. A few tried to push for Lucas's reinstatement until they realized just how much of the company he hadn't understood. Half the systems were built on code he couldn't pronounce. Key clients had already shifted loyalty to my name, not the brand. Still, the rebuilding wasn't easy. I called every client personally, no press releases, no flashy statements, just conversations. I owned up to the internal mess. I promised stability. Most of them stayed. A few needed convincing. Some never came back. I let them go. Then came the internal reorg. A few of Lucas's hires were quietly let go. I elevated the real builders, people like Sophia Lynn, our legal lead who had flagged the licensing loopholes before Lucas buried them. Avery Martinez, who rebuilt our CRM in 3 days after the dashboard went dark. And Noah Kim, our oldest engineer, who once threatened to quit when Lucas proposed switching our stack to something more buzzworthy. They were the real foundation. We didn't just recover, we evolved. By the end of year 5, Carter Tech wasn't a repair shop turned software provider anymore. We were a full-fledged SaaS company with nationwide clients and custom API solutions. We launched a new platform under the name Carter OS, a tribute to where we started. The company's valuation tripled, but none of that was what stayed with me. What stuck was silence. Dad retired a few months after the coup. No announcement, no goodbye email, just packed up his things one day and left. We still saw each other on holidays, brief, polite small talk, but the old warmth never came back. He never asked for the gift I'd handed him at the gala that night. A small box with a photo album I'd made pictures from day one. The dusty shop, the first whiteboard sketch of the tracking app, the midnight pizza runs when we couldn't afford real meals. It's still sitting unopened on my shelf, gathering dust. Lucas? Last I heard, he was trying to launch a startup in San Francisco. Something flashy with buzzwords like AI and decentralized ledger optimization. He raised seed money on his last name alone, but he couldn't deliver. Turns out, investors like buzz, but they like working products more. Word spread. People started realizing what had happened at Carter Tech, that Lucas hadn't been a visionary, just a passenger. He burned through capital, failed to meet milestones, and eventually vanished from LinkedIn. The last post I ever saw from him was some half-hearted TEDx video titled, "When Leadership Hurts, Learning from My Fall." I didn't watch it, didn't need to. One morning, nearly 2 years after everything went down, I opened my inbox and paused. Subject, Harvard Business School commencement invitation. They wanted me to speak about leadership, about resilience, about how to build something no one can take from you. I was about to decline out of habit, but then I saw the name of the event coordinator, Lucas Carter. I stared at the screen, stunned. Then I laughed, not out of cruelty, just disbelief. Somehow, life had handed me the mic. When I walked on that stage months later, I paused for a beat under the spotlights. Hundreds of graduates stared up at me, waiting. Somewhere in the front row, Lucas sat stiffly, arms crossed, his eyes locked on the floor, and I told them the truth. I was erased, I said, from the company I built, from my father's legacy, from the story. But here's the thing about people like me, builders, not talkers. We don't need attention to survive. We don't crumble without credit. We just keep showing up. I scanned the room, and for a fraction of a second, our eyes met. He looked away. I didn't. Because the truth is, I said, the most underestimated people in the room are often the most dangerous. Not because they're loud, but because they never forget. Applause erupted. But I wasn't watching the crowd, just him. Story 2. If I had to sum up my relationship with my parents in one word, it'd be conditional. Not complicated, not strained conditional. I'm Nate, 31, and from as far back as I can remember, everything in my family had a price tag. Love, support, even basic decency, it all came with strings attached. I wasn't the type of kid who threw tantrums or begged for toys. I learned young that asking usually ended in disappointment or lectures about value and earning your keep. So I stopped asking. If I wanted something, I worked for it. Not because it was noble, but because it was the only option. My younger brother, Lucas, he's 29, now didn't grow up under the same rules. If Lucas wanted something, Mom and Dad usually just handed it to him. New shoes for soccer? No problem. Missed an assignment? Everyone has off days, sweetie. Meanwhile, when I forgot homework once, Dad told me to start acting like a man. It wasn't even just about money. It was how we were treated. Lucas was fragile, needed protecting. I was resilient, independent, so I got left to fend for myself. For a while, I bought into it. I told myself I was proud of being self-sufficient. But looking back, I was just a kid figuring out how to survive in a house where affection had to be earned like a bonus check. By the time I was 16, I had been working part-time for almost a year, saving every dime for a car. I never expected my parents to buy me one, but I hoped they might meet me halfway. Then, a week before my birthday, Lucas, who had just turned 14, unwrapped a brand new gaming console. A total surprise from my parents. I remember the silence that fell over me more than anything. Dad must have picked up on the look on my face, because he said something like, "We'll talk about a car once you prove you're responsible enough." That's when I finally understood this wasn't about being independent. It was about expectations. They expected me to make it on my own. Lucas? They expected him to need help forever. At 17, I bought my own beat-up car with my savings. I put myself through college. I graduated without a cent from them. I started my own business in my late 20s. Meanwhile, Lucas drifted college dropout, job hopper, permanent house guest at my parents' place. And I never said a word. I figured, they are who they are. I kept my distance. Didn't ask for help. Didn't offer it either, except that one time, when they called me during a financial emergency, desperate and scared. I wired them money that same day. No questions asked. I figured they'd do the same for me if roles were reversed. Stupid, I know. Then, last Sunday, I got a text from my dad. Family meeting. 3 p.m. Don't be late. I stared at it for a while. We hadn't had a family meeting in over a decade. My first instinct was to ignore it. But something about the formality of it piqued my curiosity. When I showed up, Lucas was already there, half asleep on the couch, scrolling his phone. Mom and Dad were seated at the kitchen table, looking like they were about to conduct a corporate review. "Sit," Dad said, nodding at the empty chair. So I sat. No one spoke at first. Then Mom slid a piece of paper across the table toward me. I picked it up, and honestly, I thought it was a prank. It was a bill, an actual itemized invoice. $81,000. Room and board, groceries, gas money, health insurance, even rides to school when I was a teen. The absurdity of it hit me like a truck. Are you serious? I asked, thinking maybe they'd burst into laughter and say it was all a joke. They didn't. Dad leaned forward, fingers laced. You're doing well. It's time to give back. Mom chimed in. And be grateful we're only asking for this much. If we added everything, you're asking me to repay you for raising me? I said, cutting her off. It's not repayment, Dad said. It's about showing appreciation. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because I was stunned into absurdity. You think I owe you 80 grand for existing? Lucas didn't even look up, just shrugged like this was totally normal. I kept scanning the invoice, more out of disbelief than curiosity, until something near the bottom caught my eye. Loan for family emergency, $115,000. That's when the heat hit my chest. That money, I said slowly, tapping the line, wasn't a loan. I never asked you to pay it back. Well, Dad replied, you clearly had enough to spare. And just like that, the conversation shifted. I wasn't being asked. I was being cornered. They had already decided I owed them, and now they were just here to collect. That's when I pulled out my phone and opened a file I never thought I'd use. It was a document I had compiled years ago. A log of every dollar I had given them, every favor, every mysterious family emergency that somehow drained my savings. And yes, my grandfather's inheritance, which was supposed to come to me and magically disappeared. I turned the screen to them. They both stared. Mom's face drained of color. Dad clenched his jaw. You want to talk about debts? I said. Let's start with the $115K I gave you for your mortgage, or the inheritance Grandpa left me that you told me didn't exist, but actually did. Or how about the savings account you borrowed to help Lucas get on his feet? Want to itemize those? Mom reached for words but came up empty. Dad didn't even try to argue. He just said, that's different. Explain how, I said. Because we're your parents, Mom said. What we took was for the family. You had plenty. I leaned back in my chair and exhaled slowly. So let me get this straight. Everything you spent on me as a child is a loan I owe back, but everything I gave you as an adult is just gone? Because I had plenty. Their silence said everything. Dad's voice dropped. You don't want to do this. You're right, I said. I didn't. But you pushed it. He tried to backpedal, offered to negotiate, lower the number, figure out a reasonable contribution. That was the final insult. Like I was bartering for my place in the family. I stood up. I'm not paying you. Not a cent. If you walk out that door, Dad said, don't expect to come back. I looked him dead in the eye. I left a long time ago. You just didn't notice. Then I walked out, got in my car, and left. The drive back to my apartment was quiet, but my head was anything but. I couldn't stop replaying the conversation, the gall it took for them to print out a bill and slide it across the table like they were collecting rent from a roommate. The nerve to frame decades of bare minimum parenting as some kind of business investment. And Lucas, sitting there like it all made sense, like it was fair. I'd always known my parents viewed things through a different lens. But this was next-level delusion. I pulled into my spot, killed the engine, and just sat there for a minute, staring at the dashboard. My phone buzzed again, another message from Dad. I didn't check it. I knew exactly what it'd say. Some combination of guilt and control disguised as reason. When I finally got inside, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out a folder I'd kept stashed away in the back of a cabinet. I had started collecting receipts and screenshots years ago, not because I was planning anything, but because something in my gut told me I might need them one day. I didn't realize how right I'd been. The folder had it all. Transfers from my account to theirs, The $115,000 wired when they said the bank was going to foreclose on their house. Screenshots of texts from Mom. Thank you, Nate. We'll pay you back as soon as things stabilize. They never did. There was the time I noticed my savings account had suddenly dropped by nearly $40K. When I asked about it, Dad said Lucas needed help paying off student loans and getting back on his feet. I was told I'd get it back with interest. That was 8 years ago. Still waiting. Then there was the inheritance. After Grandpa passed, Uncle Marty, my mom's brother, told me he thought it was strange. I hadn't received anything. Grandpa had supposedly left equal shares for me and Lucas, managed through my parents until I was 25. That year came and went. When I asked, Mom said Grandpa hadn't left anything directly to me. I let it go. I shouldn't have. By the time I was done piecing everything together, the total amount they had taken from me quietly, over time, was staggering. Way more than the $81K they had the audacity to ask for. They wanted an invoice? I could give them one with interest. But here's the thing. I wasn't just mad about the money. I was mad about the principle, about being used, lied to, taken for granted, over and over again, and then having it twisted like I owed them. So I did what I should have done a long time ago. I made a call. Uncle Marty answered after the second ring. Nate? Wow, hey. Been a while. Yeah, I said. Listen, I need to ask you something about Grandpa's will. There was a pause, then a sigh. I was wondering when you'd bring that up. My chest tightened. So I was supposed to get something? Yes, he said without hesitation. Equal shares for both you and Lucas. Your mom and dad told me you asked them to manage your share directly, that you didn't want it all at once. I let out a breath. I never said that. He was quiet for a second. Well then, that changes things. Turns out, the will had been written so that I could legally reclaim the funds if I had never signed anything waiving my share, and I hadn't. Uncle Marty said I could take legal action. He even offered to help connect me with someone who handled estate disputes. I thanked him, hung up, and sat in that silence again, only now. It felt less like numbness and more like resolve. I wasn't going to just move on and let it go. This wasn't about revenge. This was about setting things right, drawing a line. That night, I reached out to a lawyer, a friend of a friend, someone who specialized in family and estate law. I explained everything, sent over the documentation, texts, transfers, everything. He got back to me 2 days later. You have a case, he said, plain as that. The next few weeks were a blur of legal forms, emails, and meetings. My lawyer filed the initial claims. He said we'd likely settle out of court, but if my parents resisted, we could go the full distance. Meanwhile, I ignored the calls, the texts. Even Lucas tried to reach out, sending a passive-aggressive, "Why are you being like this?" followed by, "It's just money, man." Yeah, easy to say when it wasn't your money taken from you. The day the legal notice was delivered to my parents, I didn't hear anything. Not right away, but it didn't take long. First, it was Mom, at my door, unannounced and crying. Not sobbing, just that performance cry. The kind where you're more upset about being caught than being wrong. "How could you do this to your own family?" she said, voice shaking. I didn't flinch. "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm asking for what was mine. It was for the family," she said. "You weren't struggling. You were fine. Because I worked my ass off," I snapped. "Because I never asked you for anything." Her face twisted. "You've changed." I didn't argue. I had changed. I'd stopped pretending. Dad came the next day. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. Just stood in the hallway, arms crossed, all quiet fury. "You really want to go down this road?" he asked. "I already did," I said. He didn't say goodbye. Lucas sent one last text. "You're tearing this family apart over money." I didn't respond, because the truth was, I wasn't tearing anything apart. I was just refusing to keep it taped together with guilt and silence. Weeks passed. My lawyer updated me on the progress. They tried to deny everything at first, claimed it was all gifts, said I was ungrateful. tried to guilt me through legal channels. But I had receipts. I had screenshots. I had a clear paper trail. Eventually, their lawyer advised them to settle. That's when things really hit them. They had to liquidate assets, sell their precious vacation property, pull money from retirement funds. And still, it wasn't enough to cover it all. They asked if I'd agree to a partial settlement. I said no, full repayment or we go to court. They caved. Lucas? Oh, he lost his mind. His cozy little setup free room, free car, bailout started crumbling when the financial fallout hit. He blamed me. Of course he did. I was the scapegoat now, the selfish son, the cold one, the villain. But I didn't care. Not anymore. It's been almost a year since all that went down. My parents paid back most of what they owed, through gritted teeth and legal channels. They had to sell their vacation timeshare, downsize the house, and cut back on their lifestyle. I'm sure to them, it felt like I ruined their lives, but all I did was take back what was mine. I didn't gloat. I didn't send any messages rubbing it in. I didn't show up or ask for apologies. I didn't need any of that. What I really needed was peace. Lucas still doesn't talk to me. Last I heard, he moved in with a friend after Mom and Dad couldn't float him anymore. I'm guessing he's still angry, still convinced I'm the bad guy in this whole thing. But he's not my responsibility. Never was. And my parents? Well, they tried one more time. A few months after the case was settled, I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, in Dad's handwriting. It started off polite. We hope you're doing well. But a few lines in, it turned into the same old thing, how disappointed they were, how I turned against the people who raised me, how money had changed me. Then the closer, despite everything, we still love you. You'll always be our son. But you have to make amends if this family is going to heal. I read it once, then again. I set it down on the table and stared at it for a while. It was the same pattern all over again. Love as leverage. Guilt wrapped in affection. A hand extended only if I bent first. I didn't reply, because what I finally understood, after everything, is that they never really saw me. Not as a person, not as a son, just as someone they could count on to carry weight that wasn't mine. I was the fallback plan. The one who didn't complain, the one who made it. And that's why they resented me. Not because I was cruel, but because I stopped playing the part. So now I'm just living. My business is doing well. I've rebuilt the savings they drained. I'm in a solid place, financially and mentally. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm constantly trying to prove myself. I'm not waiting for scraps of approval. I'm not carrying the guilt of being the responsible one. And let me tell you, it's freeing. Some nights, though, I do think about what could have been. Not out of regret, but out of curiosity. I wonder what kind of person I'd be if I'd grown up in a home where love wasn't a transaction. If I had parents who gave without expecting something in return. If I had ever been allowed to just be a kid. But I also know this. That version of life never existed. Not for me. So I don't dwell on it. I spend more time with friends now. People who see me for who I am, not what I can give them. I go on hikes. I cook for myself. I don't look at my phone expecting demands. There's a quiet in my life that used to feel like loneliness, but now feels like peace. I think about starting therapy, not because I'm broken, but because I want to make sure the past stays where it belongs. I want to break the cycle. If I ever have kids, they'll never feel like they owe me for being their dad. That's not what love is. And yeah, sometimes the what-ifs creep back in. What if I had just paid them something to keep the peace? What if I had just walked away quietly, let them take the money, stayed silent? But then I remember the look on my dad's face when I said no. The way my mom flinched when I showed them the receipts. That was the moment the roles flipped. That was the moment I stopped being their fallback and became my own person. And I'd do it all again. I know how this story sounds to people on the outside. You sued your parents? Yeah, I did. Because they weren't acting like parents. They acted like creditors. and I finally stopped playing the debtor. I've seen posts online, people debating whether they'd ever take legal action against family. Some say it's unforgivable. Others say it's justified. Me? I think sometimes the only way to break free is to draw a line so clear it can't be crossed again. This was mine. So if you're reading this wondering whether you're overreacting, whether you're being too harsh by standing up for yourself against your own blood, ask yourself this. If they weren't family, would you still tolerate it? Because sometimes the only way to build peace is to burn the bridge that keeps dragging you back into the fire. And that's what I did. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, out of clarity. I stopped apologizing for surviving the way I had to, and I started living the way I choose to. Story 3. When I told Brian I wanted a divorce, our 7-year-old daughter Emma clung to his neck, crying like her world was ending. Through her tears, she screamed, "Bad mommy, I hate you. If you leave Daddy, I'm staying with him forever. You'll grow old alone." I should have taken that as a warning. But in my last life, yeah, it feels like a past life now. I dismissed her tantrum as just that, a child's outburst. I fought for custody anyway, thinking I'd love her enough to change her mind. I gave that little girl everything. My time, my energy, my entire identity revolved around being her mother. I swallowed pride, ignored betrayal, and did everything I could to give her a stable home. But she never stopped resenting me. The final blow came years later. At her wedding, Emma invited Brian's mistress to give a speech. She called her mom, thanked her for rescuing Dad from a failed marriage, and praised her for making our family whole. I was sitting right there, and just like that, I went from mother of the bride to stranger in a crowd. Then I died. Liver cancer, stage 4. The irony? The one who cared for me until the end wasn't my daughter. It was a girl I once sponsored, an orphan named Lily. But that's not where this story ends. When I opened my eyes again, I wasn't in a hospital bed. I was back in the past, standing in the same cold living room, Brian in front of me, holding a sobbing Emma who had just thrown her "I hate you" speech at me again. This time, something inside me shifted. I looked right at her and said flatly, "Fine. I don't want a child who doesn't want me." Brian's eyes widened like I'd slapped him. "What the hell are you saying? In front of a child?" I kept my voice even. "She doesn't want to stay with me. And honestly, I don't want her either." Emma froze mid-sob, clearly not expecting that answer. Then she screamed louder, "Bad mommy, I hate you." Brian tried to soften it like always. "She's just upset, Natalie. You carried her for 9 months. Of course you love her." Emma looked at me, waiting, probably expecting a hug, an apology, anything to fix the moment. I gave her nothing. "Natalie," Brian snapped, "you want a divorce, and now you don't even want your own kid? Are you even a mother?" "She said she doesn't want me," I replied. "I'm just respecting her wishes." Emma's face twisted with rage. "Then why are you still divorcing? You're ruining everything. You're going to make me grow up without a family." In my last life, I tried to explain gently. I told her that Brian had cheated, that I didn't want to be in a loveless marriage. But all she did was look at me like I was the problem. "Maybe he cheated because you weren't good enough," she'd said back then. "My friend's mom is perfect. Her dad never cheats. You're not good enough. I don't want you either." Those words gutted me the first time. I kept believing she'd understand one day, that she'd come around. I never stopped loving her, not until I died. But now I've learned to stop trying to earn love that should have been mine in the first place. Back in the moment, Brian kept talking, but I tuned him out. Emma was looking up at me again, hesitant now. So I said, "Your dad begged me not to divorce him because he knows he's screwed. Divorce doesn't benefit him, but it benefits me." Emma blinked. "In my last life, I gave up everything for you. The company, my money, even my dignity. This time, you can stay with your dad. I'll take everything else." Brian's face turned red. "Have you lost all sense of decency? I learned it from you." I turned to Emma. "Even so, Do you still want to live with your dad? She hesitated, then looked at Brian, who gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Her chin lifted defiantly. Yes, I want to stay with Dad. Perfect. I turned and walked out without looking back. That night, my mom called. Did the divorce go through? Not yet. I'm redrafting it, I said. You're not giving up your company again for Emma, are you? No. Brian leaves with nothing. If Emma has a problem with that, she can go live with the Martins. My voice was cold, because this time, I was done sacrificing everything for people who didn't value me. A few days later, I drove to a nearby orphanage. I had someone in mind. Is Lily here? I asked the director. She's out at a math competition, she replied, then handed me a photo. Lily, thin, bright-eyed, 11 years old. In my last life, when I was sick and alone, she came back for me, bathed me, fed me, spent her college savings on my treatment. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have made it through school, she said once. Let me be there for you now. Meanwhile, Emma didn't even visit. I'm serious about adopting Lily, I told the director. She smiled. She's a bit older than most adoptees, but very sweet. That's fine. Before heading home, I stopped at the mall to buy some clothes and books for Lily. I picked out styles Emma used to like, assuming all little girls liked the same things. That's when I saw them. Brian, Emma, and Wendy, the woman who wrecked our marriage. The three of them looked like a picture-perfect family, holding hands and laughing. Brian froze when he saw me. Emma looked away, almost guilty. Almost. I didn't stop walking, but Brian grabbed my arm. Emma's been asking about you. Why haven't you come to see her? I looked down at Emma. She was pouting, standing behind Wendy like I was some stranger off the street. This is what you call missing me? I asked. Brian scowled. You hurt her feelings. You're the adult. Let it go. And clearly you're here to buy her gifts, right? He nodded at my shopping bags and tried coaxing Emma forward. Look, honey, your mom brought you gifts. Emma's eyes lit up. She stepped forward, trying to play it cool. Even if you bought me gifts, I won't forgive you unless you promise not to divorce Dad and say sorry to both of us. I laughed. Who said these were for you? She blinked, unsure if I was serious. Her face fell. Brian stiffened. Natalie, enough. Do you have to be cruel? I didn't respond. Emma's gaze locked onto one bag. The one with the limited edition crystal pony she had once begged me for. Her eyes widened. Brian noticed too. That's the pony you wanted, right, sweetheart? See? Mom got it for you. Just say you forgive her. Emma walked up, hands on her hips like some miniature queen. Fine. I forgive you, but you have to stop being mean to Aunt Wendy too. I looked her dead in the eye. I don't remember doing anything that needs forgiveness. And like I said, these weren't for you. Her face turned red. You're lying. Who else could they be for? You'll find out soon enough. Wendy stepped in then, playing the doting stepmom. Emma's such a sweet girl. If she were my daughter, I'd never make her cry. I looked at the three of them, the perfect little trio, and I walked away. Later that day, the store called. Miss Natalie, your husband and daughter are trying to use your VIP card to buy the same pony you purchased. Should we approve it? I smiled. No, and don't ever let them use it again. In the background, I could hear Wendy's voice. I just wanted to get her a gift, then buy it. It requires VIP status, which I don't have. Not my problem. I hung up. 3 days later, the orphanage director called. Lily's back from her competition. Would you like to meet her? That afternoon, I returned with paperwork and more gifts. When I saw her skinny, cautious, but curious, I knelt down and offered her a new backpack filled with stationery and math books. You like math, right? She nodded, eyes glowing. I got you some new materials. Hope you like them. She hugged the bag to her chest like it was treasure. Thank you, she whispered. I really, really like them. And just like that, I knew I'd made the right choice. I brought Lily home that same day. The apartment wasn't huge, just a 2-bedroom place close to my company, but it felt safe, quiet, mine. I had already converted the second bedroom from a home office into a kid's room, kept the bookshelves and the desk, added a bed, a reading lamp, some storage bins, and soft yellow curtains. I didn't want anything overly frilly or pink, just something warm, somewhere she could breathe. Lily didn't say much when she walked in, but I could see it in her eyes, the awe, the disbelief. She traced her fingers along the books, the edges of the desk, then turned to me and asked, "All this is for me?" I nodded. "Of course, this is your room now." She blinked fast, trying not to cry, but her lower lip wobbled anyway. Then she launched forward and hugged me around the waist. "Thank you, Mom." That hit me harder than I expected. Not because I wasn't ready for it, but because it felt right. Like I'd always been waiting to hear it from the wrong child. The next morning we went to the police station and made it official. Her name was changed to Lily Song. And just like that, we started our summer together, easy days, soft routines. I took her with me to work most mornings. I'd answer emails and review contracts while she sat nearby, working through math problems or drawing little doodles in the margins of her notebooks. In the afternoons, we'd walk to a small cafe or go to the bookstore. Sometimes we'd cook dinner together. Sometimes I'd just sit and watch her read. She never asked for anything, never demanded toys or threw fits. Every time I brought her something, new pens, a book on algebra, even a set of colored markers, she acted like I'd given her the world. And I thought, this is what it should feel like, being a mom. The peace didn't last long. About a month later, my phone rang. It was Brian. I hadn't heard from him since I blocked their access to my VIP accounts at the mall. "Natalie," he said the second I picked up, "what the hell are you doing?" I pulled the phone away and blinked at the ceiling. "Hi to you too. You're tearing this family apart. For what? Some money? You've ruined everything." In the background, I could hear his mother. "Vicious woman. You've cursed this family. You'll get your karma." I set the phone on the counter and walked away to pour myself some tea. Let them rant. 10 minutes later, I came back and hung up. Then, just as I was settling into the couch with Lily, my lawyer messaged. "Documents finalized. We'll be filing your amended divorce papers this week. Property division included. No worries, we'll recover everything the Martin family siphoned over the years." I smiled. Finally. Later that day, Brian called again, different tone this time. Desperate. Like someone who finally realized the other person had stopped playing along. "Look, Natalie, let's talk. Be reasonable. About what? The divorce. Let's not rush. Emma's still a kid. She needs her parents together." I could hear Emma sniffling nearby. "I want Daddy." "Don't take Daddy away," Brian sighed loudly. "See? This is what you're doing to her." I kept my voice steady. "She already picked you, remember? She said it to my face. So let her stay with you. She didn't mean it, she's just a child." "Right. A child who's old enough to insult me. She made her choice. I'm respecting it." That's when his mother grabbed the phone. "Don't be stupid. What man doesn't fool around a little? Brian's young and handsome. Of course women want him. But you? You'll be lucky if another man even looks at you. Divorced, bitter, what man wants a woman like that?" I chuckled. "And yet I was the one funding your house, your spa days, your shopping. I wonder what kind of man wants a son who can't even pay his own bills." Silence. Then Emma's voice came through the line. "Mom, please. I don't want a new daddy." I sighed and kept my voice calm but sharp. "You're all acting like I'm fighting to keep her. Have you even read the agreement?" Brian paused. "What? Read the damn contract, Brian." A few seconds passed, then came the frantic rustle of papers. You gave up custody?" His voice cracked. "At your and Emma's request. I didn't want to force anything." Silence again. And then his mother, her voice suddenly shaking. "Are you even human? What kind of mother abandons her own child?" I didn't answer. But in that moment, I knew the real reason they were panicking. The money. Not Emma. Not love. Just their golden goose finally flying away. I ended the call. Lily walked into the room, blinking up at me. "You okay?" I smiled and ruffled her hair. "Better than ever. School started a few weeks later. I almost transferred Lily to a different district, worried about the past overlapping with our future, but the school had strong academics, and the principal knew Lily by name, so I let her stay. She was one grade above Emma, different classes, different floor. I thought that would be enough. It wasn't. Less than a month into the term, I got a call from the school. "There's been an incident," the teacher said carefully. "Could you come in?" I rushed over. Before I even got to the office, I could hear the voices. "She's a thief." Emma's shrill tone cut through the hallway. "She stole my crystal pony, the one my mom got me." Lily's voice was small but steady. "I didn't steal anything. You did. You're just a stupid orphan. No one wants you." "I have a mom," Lily said, voice trembling. "She wants me." "No, she doesn't. You're a nobody." That's when I walked in. The second the door opened, both girls turned. Lily's eyes lit up with relief. Emma's widened like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. "Mom," they both said at the same time, but I didn't even hesitate. I walked past Emma, straight to Lily, and wrapped my arm around her. "Hi, I'm Lily's mom," I told the teacher. Lily leaned into me, body shaking. Emma looked stunned. "No, I'm your daughter," she shouted. "She's not your kid." "I am." I looked her dead in the eye. "Lily is my daughter now, and I won't let you bully her." Emma's face turned red. "You raised me. You carried me when I was sick. You protected me from boiling water. You loved me, and I did all of that," I said calmly. "But love has to go both ways. You knew how much I loved you, and you still chose to hurt me. Over and over. That's not love." The teacher sat us both down and reviewed the situation. Lily hadn't stolen anything. Emma had lied. It was clear. And I made it even clearer what I expected. "I want a public apology." In front of the whole school. Monday assembly. The teacher nodded. Emma started crying. But I was done letting her tears rewrite history. That night, Lily climbed into my bed with her blanket and whispered into my back, "I'll be really, really good to you, Mom." I turned and kissed her forehead. "You already are." A few days later, my lawyer messaged me. The final divorce agreement was ready to sign. I brought Lily with me. Brian, his mother, and Emma were already there when we arrived. The three of them looked like shadows of their former selves, messy, tired, hollowed out. No maids, no money, no smiles. Guess losing the gravy train hit harder than expected. Brian signed with a grimace, but not a word. He knew I had dirt on him videos, messages, pictures of Wendy moving into my house before we even separated. He knew if I posted those, his job was gone. His reputation too. So he signed. As I got up to leave, a small hand tugged on my sleeve. Emma. Her hair was messy, face streaked with tears. "Mom, I'm sorry," she whispered. "Please let me live with you. I don't want to stay with them anymore." It might have broken me once, that small voice, that desperate tone. But now, I just peeled her fingers off me. "I'm not your mom anymore." And I walked out, Lily's hand in mine, our future waiting just beyond the glass doors. I didn't look back when we walked out of that courthouse. Didn't need to. That part of my life, the lies, the guilt, the constant chasing after love that should have been unconditional, it was over. We stepped out into the sun. Lily was gripping my hand so tight, her knuckles turned white. "You okay?" I asked her. She nodded, a little too fast. I didn't like seeing them." "Neither did I said. "But that's the last time we have to." And I meant it. Back home, we got right back into our rhythm: quiet breakfasts, evening walks, bookstore trips. Lily started sleeping better. Her grades stayed strong. She made a couple of friends at school who liked math as much as she did. And every Friday they'd meet at the library to study. For a while, I forgot Emma even existed. Not in a cruel way, just. My life stopped revolving around her. She was no longer the center of my choices. I wasn't tiptoeing around her mood swings or her accusations. I wasn't begging for scraps of affection. I was free. Until the school called again. I sighed when I saw the number. Picked up anyway. It's not Lily, the principal said immediately. But she's involved. There's been another issue with Emma. Apparently, she'd cornered Lily during recess and tried to yank her backpack away, yelling something about "you stole my mom, and that's my life, not yours." It wasn't the first time she'd lashed out, but it was the first time a teacher saw it happen. They suspended her for 3 days. That should have been a wake-up call. It wasn't. Instead, Brian called me that evening, furious. "What did you teach her? To replace Emma? To ruin her life?" "She ruined her own life," I said calmly. "And if you really cared, maybe try parenting instead of blaming me." He didn't respond to that, just hung up. A few weeks later, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Wendy was pregnant with a boy, a son. And just like that, Emma went from being Brian's golden girl to someone he barely noticed. Wendy had always tolerated Emma to get close to Brian, but now that she had what she wanted, she didn't need to pretend. I heard about the yelling, the arguments, the punishments. Emma wasn't their pride anymore, she was just another mouth to feed. They never said it, but I knew why Emma came to me, asking to come back. It wasn't about me, it was about survival. But I didn't owe her that anymore. One night, Lily was working on her math problems at the kitchen table, and I was cleaning up dinner when she looked up and said, "Do you think she ever really loved you?" I knew who she meant. I sat down across from her. I think she loved the version of me that gave her everything and asked for nothing. But the real me? The one who got tired, the one who said no, she didn't want that version. Lily nodded slowly. "I hope she learns someday." "I do too," I said, "but I won't wait around for it." The years passed. Lily got accepted into one of the top universities in the country for mathematics. I still remember the day the letter came. She opened it in the hallway, let out a sharp little gasp, and then just dropped to the floor, laughing and crying all at once. I'd never seen her cry from joy before. It hit me harder than anything else ever had. She graduated top of her class, published a few papers that shook up her field, eventually started speaking at international conferences. I'd sit in the front row sometimes, watching her talk equations and theories with a fire in her eyes. Other times I'd skip the lectures entirely and go wander through local shops, or find a bench somewhere and just read in the sun. We traveled like that for years. She'd speak, I'd explore, then we'd meet up at some little cafe and compare stories. Life was peaceful, honest. Then one day, out of nowhere, my assistant called. "There's a woman here," she said. "Says her name is Emma." I didn't say anything. "She's asking why you didn't want her," my assistant added softly. "She looks rough." I told her to send her away, not because I was angry, but because I had nothing left to give her. She made her choice a long time ago, and I made mine. I later heard Emma had dropped out of school before even finishing high school. She ran with the wrong crowd, got pregnant young. Nobody knew who the father was. Brian beat her when he found out. Wendy washed her hands of the situation. Then one day, Emma took all the money in the house, locked her baby brother in a room while he had a fever, and vanished. The boy was left disabled. Wendy had a breakdown. Brian lost his job after showing up drunk to work one too many times. Last I heard, he was doing construction. Wendy was gone. Emma never came back. And me? I gave the company to someone else to run. I started volunteering at the same orphanage where I'd first met Lily. Every time I walked through the halls, I saw a younger version of her in one of the kids. Hopeful, quiet, waiting. I kept my promise to her. I gave her the life I wished someone had given me when I was a child. Not just shelter or education, but love with no strings, affection without expectation. She earned everything she became, but I got to walk beside her on the way there. People ask me if I ever regretted it, if I miss Emma, if I ever think about what could have been, and I tell them this. Not every mother-daughter bond is written in blood. Sometimes, love is a choice. A quiet one, a firm one, a final one, and I chose right.